it's such a nice incident that you asked me to come speak, because I've been trying to formulate a way to connect all the Nepali. And I've been talking with my team, like, we need to have a collective Nepali dream. So by way of preparing for this speech, it forced me to become very clear about what it is. So that is what I'm going to talk about today. 20 years ago, I left Nepal in search for a better future, in search of better education, because my sister, who was studying her higher education here, told me all about, she'd come back home and she'll talk about, due to unions, the schools are closed, or you need to get a sifaris from a union member to get admitted in microbiology. She would tell me a lot of these things. So I felt it deep in my heart, like I need a better education environment. So look, the first time I left Nepal in 2003, I left in search for a good education, in a hope that, I will have better salary once I graduate, that I'll have more options than my sister that I saw as my reference, somebody who guided me. Now, today, 20 years later, I still see the same pursuit of better education, better job opportunities, stability, a place where a lot of youngsters, I was just talking to few people before the program as well, and I know a lot of you are preparing, right? So it's the same story that I'm hearing, the same thing that I left 20 years ago that I'm seeing now. So the question that I keep asking myself is, why is our society so stuck? 20 years later also, we're still struggling with the same basic fundamental things, especially for youth. It's been a year since I took office as a federal parliamentarian. And there is one aspect that I feel it's very missing in my interaction in the Parliament House in general. It's about what is something that binds all of us together. What is that dream that each of us aspires to see from our different perspectives? Me right now as a federal parliamentarian, you as a student, somebody as an engineer, a young couple thinking about expanding the family. What is that common dream that really binds us together? And that is an attempt I'm going to try today. What I have seen, something that, I would think, let's think, and let's probably collectively have that common dream. But I'll give you my perspective of what it is. So one thing that I can try to do is expand upon my experience in 2003 to how the youngster now is aspiring as well, right? A lot of us aspire for a foreign visa to United States, to Canada, to Australia. A lot of us go to Qatar, to Korea. What is that dream that starts as soon as you step on a foreign land outside Nepal? What is that thing? So in this analysis, as I'm trying to dream up, and I'm trying to find a common thread that binds us together, that we can collectively aspire towards, one of the things I feel is we all want a predictability. We all want a fairness in system, that if we were to put effort, that effort on its own will yield result. We want a system where we don't need to know somebody. We want a system where if we have an idea, we have a common problem, if we make an honest mistake, that there is a safety net, that we are not left on a free fall, right? That is what I left 20 years ago. And I think that is probably still the case now, that we are leaving for a place like that. And what defines a place like that, where there is predictability in outcome, there is predictability in fairness of struggle. I'm not saying we don't want to struggle. All of us are very up in the arms. We are ready to roll up our sleeves and struggle. but we don't want to be banging our head against a concrete wall. Such a place probably is a place that would be defined by a state that has good governance, right? So now, when we define a place that has good governance, now let's break it down on where I think, in terms of disaggregating where that good governance comes from. And what would that good place of good governance look like? I think, and from my perspective, and this is my dream, and I want you to also think about what is your dream, what is that thing that would keep us in this space, or what would Nepal need to be certain years from now, not immediately, of course that's not possible, certain years from now that will keep us here, right? And maybe that is a place to be free. And this is how I define freedom. It's an economic freedom where, if you were to go apply for a job, after certain years, you'll be able to afford certain things, provide for your family certain kind of lifestyle. Maybe it is a social freedom where you can be who you are without being judged all the time and being told, don't do this, don't do that, where you're accepted for who you are. And maybe it's a political freedom. I think in Kathmandu, maybe we don't recognize this very much. But if you go to rural areas, the kind of service, even a simple document as your birth certificate, your Basai Sarai, becomes very entangled with who you voted for, who you align with. Maybe it is that freedom. And that is that is my dream for Nepal. That is my Nepali dream, right? So you can truly exist just as a Nepali. You get services just because you are Nepali, not because you know somebody, not because you are born into certain family, or not because you are friends with somebody. That freedom. I think that is a place where there will be good governance. A place where you can go in government offices without having an anxiety. Oh, law ke bhancha, right? I mean, I have gone to a lot of government offices. I have been lucky to meet very young bureaucrats who've really supported. I have not been lucky in many instances, but anytime I think about going to a government office, doing any kind of work, I'm filled with anxiety. Maybe that is the freedom from this anxiety that we need. And that is probably what good governance comes from. Where if we were to struggle together, our struggles will be fair, and the distribution will be able to create the wealth together, and the distribution of that wealth will be together. Perhaps Nepali Dream is about having that level playing field. Most of the times when we talk about level playing field, it has been described as the structural marginalization. It's true, and we need to accept that. Till 6 decades ago, Dalits could not own asset. It's the truth of our society. We have caste discrimination. We have geographical discrimination. We have discrimination based on how we look. So we've inherited this uneven playing field that now we have a layer of this political reach that makes it even more uneven. That gives, in terms of predictability, it really reduces the predictability that we have, right? So now when we are struggling with all of this, think about if you were a business. How will you come up with a business plan where day one, because you know somebody, that is an okay business. It's all right, it's legit, it's everything. Day 20, the government officer changes, and then it no longer becomes okay. I think that is the certainty that businesses need. So you can actually model out what's the return, ROI on your investment, right? So now if we agree good governance is maybe where our collective dream is, let's talk about what creates good governance. What is that level playing field? Who creates that? This is a part where I would really like to draw your attention. For the longest time, we've been told the governance, right? It is like we've Nepal has experimented with a lot of form of governance. But if you were to really think about governance, who do you meet when you step into passport office? Who do you meet when you step into Department of Transportation? Who do you meet when you go to ward office? Do you meet politicians? Do you meet members of parliament? Do you meet your mayors, your wards? Who do you meet? You meet bureaucrats, right? So, when we are talking about good governance, what is that entity that we should be really thinking about? Has that entity changed? Has that entity evolved over time to keep up with our aspirations? So this is important. I'll tell you a story. I was in one of my parliamentary committees. There was the education secretary, and we were discussing education bill, we're discussing teachers, and I asked, do teachers get fired for non-performance? And this was his response. Teacher को के कुरा गर्नुहुन्छ मान्यज्यू? ब्युरोक्रेसीमा 100मा 100 नम्बर नदिकन 79 दियो भने म हिँड्न सक्दिनँ. That he basically meant, don't just talk about teachers. Even in bureaucracy, if I were to not give a 100% evaluation form, then I won't be able to walk down the streets, which means nobody gets let go due to non-action. Isn't that incredible? Even when you've tried to do anything, right? Any kind of team, there are always this amazing performers, there are average performers, and there are members for whom it's a very wrong fit and they need to be placed somewhere else. And that apparently doesn't happen. How can there be an administrative state where there is no rewards or punishment? How can there be an administrative state where somebody's innovation is not given good job, go ahead, and somebody's complete lack of action only gets penalized by transfers? You get transferred. You still have your job, right? So we need to think about this aspect, that state, administrative state is not your politician, it's not your members of parliament, it's not your janprathinidhi, it's the bureaucracy. Now let's talk about who determines how bureaucracy functions. There we come in. We define via the parliamentary acts, we define the framework within which the bureaucracy is supposed to work. We define the boundaries of the bureaucracy. Now let's look at some of the bills I'm gonna ask you to project. And I want you to think about this for a sec, right? For the longest time, we've been told corruption is abuse of your authority for private gain. We've been told corruption is, we see corruption mostly from financial corruption perspective. There is financial lending, there is orobongo bhrashtachar. But today I want you to consider corruption from the perspective of non-action. Somebody who's been trusted, who's been given all the authority to change, but doesn't do it. The non-action. So let's start. By the way, how many times have we heard tourism is the way to develop Nepal? Raise your hand. Tourismले विकास हुन्छ, tourismले विकास हुन्छ, tourismले विकास हुन्छ भनेर हैन, पर्यटन. All right. So, Kimji, you are a tourism व्यवसायी. Whenever you go, you want to open a new hotel, you want to open, who do you meet? You meet bureaucracy, right? Is that true? Louder, please, so everybody can hear. Right? He doesn't come meet me. He doesn't go meet a lawmaker. He doesn't go meet a politician. Whenever he goes to a department, he meets a bureaucrat. So tourism ko act, apparently the first one was in 2021 that was scrapped. And then there is a new 2035 BS. About 45 years ago, this tourism bill was enacted. Now let's look at what we people like me have done to help craft bureaucracy such that the bureaucracy then creates an environment for people like Khem Lakhai to then create jobs in tourism sector. So we have more jobs in tourism. It actually contributes to our GDP. Right now, tourism, the official data shows it contributes less than 5% in the GDP. And that is the sector we've heard bazillion times, I've heard bazillion times, is going to be the path to Nepal's prosperity. So, all right, do I move? Click. Right. Tourism Act has been amended 6 times. So 2035 is when it was, that I said earlier. The first amendment was in 42, then 48, 2053, 66, 72, and 75. Now let's look at, or this one is the most recent one that I got to basically tell I disagree with the amendment, but let's look at it. We've been told that it is going to be the hub. Law. So first, second, and third amendment defined tracking agencies. Then a state came and said, oh, I will charge you fine if you do not book your tracking agencies. Then there were some fees. Then there were some delegated legislations given to travel agencies, to Pradesh. And then there were few names given. You will be very surprised that this is the level at which this act talks about. In the most recent amendment, we got reached out by tourism entrepreneurs saying, can you please include kayaking as also the form of tourism activities? That is the state we are in. Now let's look at the very interesting amendments. पहिलो संशोधन, उचाइमा जाने भरियाको साटो उचाइमा जाने कामदार. This is the first amendment. है, स्थानीय भरियाको साटो स्थानीय कामदार. It gives dignity, sure, to the title, but what does it do in reality? The second amendment, restaurant भन्ने शब्दको साटो restaurant तथा resort. Then the third one, श्री 5 को सरकारको साटो नेपाल सरकार. It's hilarious, isn't it? Because you face, I mean, when we talk about staying in Nepal, whether Nepal is livable, it's the bureaucracy that defines how they interact. Are they nice? Do they speak politely? Or are they dismissive? But our laws have not done anything to tell bureaucracy this is the way to behave. This, in New Nepal, this is not acceptable. It just feels like for very important positions, now instead of calling Mausuf, we call Pradhan Mantri, right? So that is in tourism. So this is my analysis in terms of lawmaking, which is, and the definition I said earlier, is it's not enough to think of corruption as monetary give and take. When people have power, when people are asked to work, when people are trusted to work to improve the situations, if they don't do what they are expected to do, that is probably bigger corruption than just monetary give and take. Because what have we done to tourism industry? We've not done anything much because we've not crafted bureaucracy to create an enabling environment. Yeah? All right. Now, this is Tribhuvan University. I've been fighting for a long time. So this bill was enacted 2049, and this is the amendment. This is the only amendment in Ucha Shiksha, in higher education. It changed from king to prime minister. That was done in 2063. And now you tell me why our higher education is stuck. It's stuck. And this is, I say this with so much pain. It's like, I don't know how many Einsteins we've just not identified. We've not given environment. How many Nobel Prize winners we've not just groomed because we're stuck. And we think by changing this from Sri Panchko Sarkar to Pradhan Mantri as Kulpati, things change. It does not. And this is what I really want you to demand of your representatives. Ask concrete things. Don't settle for, I'll give you good education. Ask how. What law will you change? Because politicians don't give you good education, you see. It's the laws that your lawmakers make that then impacts bureaucracy, that then impacts the budgetary allocation, that then comes to you. You need to know this cycle. That will empower you to ask right questions. So now let's look at how, so in the recent budget and previous budget, how many times have we heard knowledge-based economy is going to be the driver for Nepal? Knowledge-based economy,
विदेशमा बसेको नेपालीहरूले नेपालको महत्त्वपूर्ण भूमिका गर्छ, डायस्पोराले गर्छ भन्ने. We've heard that quite a bit, no? NRNs and everything. Now let's look at an important, what I think is an important bill on that aspect, right? यो 2000, this was in 2021, विदेशमा लगानी गर्न प्रतिबन्ध लगाउने ऐन. 2021. Again, in 2066, the only amendment to this act has been from king to prime minister. What this does is, if we're going to talk about knowledge-based economy, a lot of you are probably involved in tech companies. When you have a tech product, when you have a tech service, do you not need to market your product and services? How are you going to market your product and services unless you are able to buy, unless you are able to hire a marketing person, a salesperson? You need to expand. In order to scale, you need to rapidly hire your sales force, your marketing force, right? But this law basically prevents you from doing that. And that has not been amended from 2066, except for from king to prime minister. So the only person this impacts is the senior-most person in the bureaucracy. Like I said before, पहिला मौसुफ भन्नु पर्थ्यो, अहिले प्रधानमन्त्रीज्यू भन्नुपर्छ. It has not trickled down. It's not impacted any of us. We want Nepalis to come back. But what this does is, if you earn something abroad, you have to bring it back in 35 days. But we go back and forth. How is this law going to help that knowledge-based economy? It does not. This needs massive amendment. How many of you work for startups and you get stock options as form of compensation? You probably do. But you are not able to take it openly because Nepali laws does not allow. Because it's not adapted to the concept that you will be compensated not just in cash, but also in stock options, so that when the company gets acquired, it goes public, you will also get a right in that. No? These are the laws that are preventing. And in the absence of these laws, what happens is then you have to make these trips to politicians saying, make it work. And then the politicians talks to some bureaucracy saying, what are the loopholes that exist? What are the financial structures that exist to make it happen? And that is when you have a shakedown of businesses, of honest businesses that are trying to make a living here, because it exists in legal vacuum. This is what I mean. In all our existence, all of the members of parliaments that have existed, I just don't know how this was acceptable. You know, the only amendment to Tribhuvan University Act was to change Kulpatima from king to prime minister. This is why, guys, I think the students will continue to leave Nepal unless we can fix this situation. There is one thing politicians really can impact, which is giving a culture to a bureaucracy. How do you talk to the person who is coming? How do you deal with unique cases? Do you have a team meeting once a month of all the secretaries that then talks about, oh, there is this new industry that's coming. We don't have a legal framework. What do we need to do? What can we do? I know there are people who wants to create ski resorts in Nepal. Law doesn't exist because, as you saw from the tourism definition, these are the only things that the law recognizes as touristic activities. So, my friends, what I ask of you today is to dream with me together. Let's dream of a Nepal where you can truly be free, where you don't need to know somebody just because you have an idea that lawmakers like myself have not thought of. Let's dream of a Nepal where you are allowed to be innovative. You're allowed to take risks. You're allowed to take chances with your ideas without somebody coming to shake you down, without somebody coming to shut down your business. Where it's truly level playing field and you don't need to know somebody to live a dignified life. That is my dream. I really ask you to also spend some time to think about it, and collectively, let's create that aspiration. Me as a lawmaker in my tenure that I'm going to work towards, you as a hotel entrepreneur in hospitality, you as a tech entrepreneur, you as a student, each of us, we need to collectively build this dream. We need to collectively let everybody know this is the Nepal we want to strive for, and work on that little brick by brick, working towards it. educating everyone, not creating information asymmetry, being open with it, and collectively building on Nepal that, like, I hope 10 years down the line, people won't have to leave like I had to leave. Thank you. Thank you very much.